What's the funniest way you've ever gotten revenge on a prankster? My college roommate Danny thought he was the king of pranks. For 3 months straight, this guy made my life a living nightmare with his stupid jokes. It started small. He'd put plastic wrap over the toilet seat, hide my alarm clock across the room, stuff like that. But Danny got bolder as the semester went on. He short-sheeted my bed before my girlfriend came over, put salt in my coffee instead of sugar right before my morning exam. He even convinced our entire floor that I was afraid of butterflies by leaving fake ones everywhere. The final straw was when he filled my backpack with shaving cream right before my presentation in economics class. I reached in to grab my notes and pulled out a handful of foam in front of 30 people and Professor Williams. Danny thought it was hilarious. I was furious. But here's the thing about Danny. He was obsessed with his appearance. This kid spent 2 hours every morning doing his hair, had like 15 different hair products lined up on his dresser, and took more selfies than an Instagram model. His pride and joy was his hair routine. He used this expensive gel that cost $40 a bottle, and he'd get genuinely angry if anyone even touched the container. So I waited for the perfect opportunity. Danny had a huge date coming up with this girl named Emma from his chemistry class. He'd been talking about her for weeks, planning this elaborate dinner at some fancy restaurant downtown. The night before his date, Danny went to shower around 11 p.m. like always. He'd leave his hair products lined up perfectly on his dresser, ready for his morning routine. That's when I made my move. I carefully unscrewed the cap on his precious hair gel and dumped out about half of it. Then I went to the kitchen and mixed up my secret weapon: honey, corn syrup, and just a tiny bit of olive oil. I stirred it until it had the exact same consistency and color as his hair gel. Then I carefully poured it back into the container and screwed the cap back on. Everything looked completely normal. The next morning, I pretended to be asleep when Danny's alarm went off at 7 a.m. I could hear him shuffling around getting ready for his big date that night. He went through his usual routine: shower, teeth, then the hair. I heard him squeeze the gel into his hands and start working it through his hair like always. Everything seemed normal for about 30 seconds. Then I heard him say, "What the hell?" I cracked one eye open and saw Danny looking in the mirror, trying to style his hair. But instead of his usual perfect look, his hair was sticking up in weird clumps and getting stickier by the second. He tried to brush it down, but that just made it worse. The honey mixture was hardening as it dried, turning his hair into this bizarre, crusty sculpture. Danny started panicking. He ran back to the bathroom and tried to wash it out, but honey doesn't just rinse away with water. If anything, it got stickier when it got wet. He spent 45 minutes in that shower using every shampoo we had in the dorm. Nothing worked. His hair looked like he'd stuck his finger in an electrical socket and then dunked his head in maple syrup. By now, he knew someone had messed with his gel. He came storming out of the bathroom, dripping wet, hair pointing in every direction. Who did this? I sat up in bed, stretching and yawning like I just woke up. Dude, what happened to your hair? Danny was furious, but he couldn't prove anything. And his date was in 12 hours. He tried everything. More shampoo, dish soap, even peanut butter because someone online said it removes sticky stuff. Nothing worked. Finally, around 2 p.m., Danny swallowed his pride and called his sister, who was a hairdresser. She told him the only way to get that mess out was to cut most of it off. Danny ended up at Supercuts getting what was basically a buzz cut. His beautiful, perfectly styled hair that took 2 hours every morning was gone in 15 minutes. But here's the best part. Emma actually loved his new look. She said he looked more rugged and mature without all that fancy hair product. They ended up dating for the rest of college. Danny never found out it was me, but the prank stopped immediately after that. Turns out when someone messes with the thing you care about most, you suddenly lose interest in messing with other people. I felt a little guilty about it, especially since his date went well anyway. But mostly I felt satisfied that Danny learned what it was like to be on the receiving end of a prank. The funny thing is, 3 years later at our graduation party, Danny was telling the story of his mysterious hair disaster to a group of friends. He was laughing about it, saying it was actually the best prank anyone ever pulled on him because it taught him to stop being such a jerk to his roommate. That's when I finally confessed. Danny's jaw dropped. Then he started laughing so hard he nearly choked on his beer. You genius! I spent months trying to figure out who did that. He said it was the most perfectly executed revenge he'd ever seen, and he totally deserved it for being such an annoying prankster. We're still friends today, and Danny still brings up the great hair gel incident whenever we hang out. He says it's the reason he learned to be more considerate of other people.